With a certain game crossing the platform border to PC territory, I think it's time we discussed an apocalyptic scenario of a not galaxy-wide invasive species, but a galactic empire hell-bent on serving their religious ideologies with complete genocidal destruction. This week I'm not doing it alone, as I will be discussing the matter alongside the iconic man himself, Hidden Xperia.
That's right, WoW, and this week we are covering the Johnson-hugging, plasma-packing premium glasscrafters. The praise be the 4K runners. They think the Pan Journey are great. If you like it, put a ring on it. The ultimate example of jealousy and contempt. The Wookiees on steroids. The how the hell did that jackal snipe me? The I'll trade you 13 ships for one Covenant warship, a noble effort.
Knights that know how to open a can of worms. The Rapture is coming. They are different colors, so they have a little more health. Hopefully the next installment isn't overflowing with microtransactions game itself. This week, we are telling you why you wouldn't survive Halo's Covenant invasion. Now, a little over a year ago, Hidden Xperia and I both delved into the concept individually of what could possibly happen if the Flood descended onto our planet in our current day and age without any warning or preparation, which you can check those out at the end of the video. But the Flood were not the solitary and only foreboding threat against us as a race in the Halo franchise. No, before the Flood bursted through the proverbial floodgates, an expansive empire reaching across the Orion arm of the Milky Way galaxy called the Covenant Empire sought to integrate as many worlds and species as it could, creating alliances, indoctrination, or by simply overpowering them, somewhat like Half-Life's Zen.
This empire was constructed and focused around the Covenant religion that worshipped the ancient race of the Foreigners, a long extinct but advanced race who were viewed as an all-powerful and omnipotent group that created the means to achieve divinity by ascending beyond our own physical world. With the discovery of the 7 monolithic installations known as the Halos, the prophets of this newly developing faith would assume that the power of these sacred rings could be triggered, unleashing a galaxy-wide event that would transcend all believers to a similar state that the Foreigners currently reside in, while also leaving behind those lacking devout faith. Now, I think that some similarities can be drawn here with modern religion's views on, say, Rapture, except, now there are giant genocide rings floating in space.
The Covenant Empire would quickly see to procuring any forgotten Forerunner technology to utilize it, even if they didn't know what the hell they were doing with it, to advance their religious cause, with the addition of many different alien species over time, including the Sangheili, the the Yanme'e, the Kig-yar, the Ungoi, and eventually the Jural-Hane. Now, sorry if I mispronounce any of those, all primarily led by the top of the hierarchy in terms of religious and political influence, the San-Shium. We will discuss each species and their influence upon your chances of survival a bit later. With this total empire trying to find and achieve their ultimate goal, the eventual discovery of the human race would also lead to the potential decay of the empire's belief system. When a Kig-yar frigate had, by random coincidence, came across a human cargo ship that had been having slip space engine issues. After a series of raids on the human ships, the UNSC sought to come to a trading agreement with the newfound Covenant, and perhaps even come to a peaceful settlement, while the Covenant agreed to a meeting on the agricultural world of Harvest. The Covenant had hostile intentions from the beginning, but continued under a peaceful guise to procure the astoundingly large amount of Forerunner artifacts that had been detected on the planet by the Luminary, a piece of technology that could detect Forerunner technology.
The Forerunner glyphs were originally deciphered to read the word reclamation, but soon they discovered the actual word was reclaimers, and that these glyphs were no simple glyphs. They were the humans themselves, meaning that these newly found species were directly related to the Foreigners, and by their own religious standards, this would mean that these undeserving new vermin would be the true inheritors of the Great Journey. It was here that the higher-ups among the Covenant felt threatened, not only for themselves, but for the entire Covenant itself, the structure and confidence held amongst the Great Covenant's population, and thusly declared the humans as natural-born heretics who wanted nothing more than to destroy everything the Covenant held dear in the Foreigners' artifacts and teachings. seeking also to invade human settlements to take whatever foreign artifacts they could along the way.
During the first direct human and Covenant meeting, a trigger-happy Ungoy fired and killed one Private Osmo, leading to a hellish firefight with a chain of events that concluded with the glassing of numerous colonies on the planet of Harvest and the destruction of armed response, interplanetary emergency communications, and over 140 escaped freighters. Ships did come to investigate the lack of communication, fearing insurrectionists, but were met with one solitary Covenant warship broadcasting the message, "Your destruction is the will of the gods, and we are the instrument," before decimating their minuscule forces in the span of only 14 seconds. Only one ship was able to escape and alert the human race of the new alien threat, while a majority of Harvest's surface was glassed and eradicated. This would cause the immediate action of the best the UNSC had to offer.
Over a year after the initial invasion of Harvest and also the Battle of Kaiseti 4, a grand-scale counterattack known as the Second Battle of Harvest would be engaged. The UNSC deployed the largest ever assembly of infantry in human history, consisting of over 40 warships against one singular massive Covenant ship. However, they used a slingshot maneuver around the surface of the now glassed planet to engage this warship. The preceding firefight then saw the entire 40-ship galleon unload their nuclear warheads and missiles one after another. Now, while at first this seemed pretty ineffective, it did eventually break through the Super Destroyer's defenses and decimated it. But at the cost of 13 human warships. The exchange of 13 warships worth of human lives versus one Super Destroyer was far too costly. But despite the heavy casualties, the UNSC still declared it a victory that would be used to further recruitment into their forces.
The Human Covenant War would begin to rack up millions of lives on both sides, from planet to planet, as they sought to exterminating the human race. They rarely engaged ground forces and sought to use airships like the Banshees and of course their glass-worthy warships to wipe out populaces in a quick span of time. The few victories humans would achieve were through extensive nuclear attacks and occasional tactics that paid off. But over the course of 6 years, tactics could only get us so far, with nuclear warheads and weapons of mass destruction running heavily low. We were exhausting everything we had. The UNSC would eventually deploy Spartans that were intended for insurrectionists, and these super soldiers donning heavy and advanced armor to engage in combat and defeat the Covenant little by little. More and more colonies and planets were falling to the Covenant. The Spartan 2 program wasn't cutting it, so a newer version of the Spartan program, marked Spartan 3, began in order to better utilize stealth, teamwork, and combat abilities, as sheer militaristic numbers and destructive force were just not getting the job done against the Covenant.
10 years into the war, most human outer colonies were lost, dealing a hellish blow to the economy of the greater UNSC as food shortages were becoming ever pervasive, leading to riots and unrest among the population. The Covenant were getting closer and closer to the inner colonies of the humans, putting Earth in serious risk and making total human annihilation a distinct possibility. The Cole Protocol was initiated, which prevented any ships from returning to Earth once they were discovered by the Covenant, and further spacefaring travel was restricted to only UNSC forces, causing insurrection amongst rebellious people who deemed this an infringement on their rights and freedoms, and soon, inner conflict among humanity would arise. Now, insurrection was no new thing to the UNSC and to Oni, but a group of these insurrectionists would soon change that. They would ally with supposedly renegade Kig-yar, supplying them with Covenant weapons to modify and attack UNSC officials and innocent civilians. Although Commander Keyes was able to stop them, it was discovered that the Prophet of Truth had been using these Kig-yar to attain the location of further human colonies, showing that the Covenant were capable of manipulating the untrusting side of humanity to unknowingly work in their favor.
Further back and forth conflicts continued for years, with more and more losses tallying up, with the few victories they achieved being dwarfed in comparison, with one outstanding achievement being Admiral Cole's last stand, where Admiral Cole used nuclear weapons to detonate a supermassive giant. That's right, he blew up a freaking star, while sacrificing himself, completely destroyed 2 entire Covenant fleets. A total of 300 ships and vessels were gone. It took the destructive force course of a star to claim victory against the Covenant. Eventually, the Covenant had reached the namesake of Reach by tracking an escaped ship, sending a strike team to retrieve an artifact while glassing key areas on the planet, while a majority of Reach's population was left unaware. Due to this, millions of lives were lost as 315 Covenant ships eventually exited slipspace to ambush and overwhelm the mere 100 available UNSC ships nearby, and the Covenant sent thousands of ground forces to destroy their only true means of defense, the orbital defense generators, and eventually began the total glassing of Reach.
Despite the efforts of many Spartans on the planet's surface and a hell of an adventure that gave the Covenant a run for their money and also severe damage to their most precious warships, no matter how strong and virulent humanity's forces on Reach were, the Covenant destroyed one of humanity's greatest military-industrial complexes, and their elite team of Spartans, Noble Team, in what was known as the Fall of Reach.
But that is as far as we will go with the relevant lore pertaining to the Covenant, and will now supersede this information to a real-world scenario. Now, we haven't quite reached the age of spacefaring technology achieved by the UNSC of the 26th century, but what if these Covenant frigates and warships were to stumble upon Earth before its inhabitants could even leave their little blue ball? Immediately discovering that humans were in fact the true veritable heirs to the Forerunner throne, and seeing to nipping them in the bud before growing their heretic reach out to the stars would be the main objective of the leaders of this religious organization. How would modern-day humanity fare against the culmination of multiple different species with technology and weapons that far exceed anything we can realistically fathom at this point?
While the Prophet of Regret secretly and accidentally engaged in a discreet attack on Earth to procure further artifacts, against the knowledge of his colleagues, despite his great failure and later the loss of Truth's entire fleet, it would still come to pass that only this planet held the greatest key to unlocking the Holy Rings. Stumbling upon Earth before humanity even mastered the art of space travel would have countless repercussions for our species. As stated earlier, while scanning the galaxy for artifacts of the Foreigners, the prophets of the Covenant faith would hastily discover how concentrated Earth's surface would be with said relics. Although chances of a peaceful meeting may be slim, it could be established maybe, as some parts of the Covenant would be pleased with incorporating a new race to their grand scheme, especially the Sangheili, who had once sung our praises for how tough and resourceful we were. However, that would all very quickly change once the prophets would decipher that humanity were the rightful heirs to the Great Journey, and as not to ruin the foundations of their faith, they would more than likely immediately order the genocide of our species by labeling us as heretics.
Now you can see this scenario as somewhat like that scene in Mars Attacks, where a message of coming in peace from these alien invaders would be portrayed right before an all-out attack would occur. Ground units would be deployed in order to search for relics, while certain areas of the planet would already be undergoing glassing procedures from the Covenant warships. The troops that we would bear witness to would be numerous, well-armed, and definitely overwhelming.
The Covenant primarily wield plasma and particle-based weaponry, using them against a planet of people using bullets, explosions, and more penetrating means of ammunition. In the heat of battle, guns like the plasma rifle, beam rifle, and plasma pistol could very well outlast human weaponry as they try to reload and keep ammo supplies up. And if not used excessively enough to overheat, they can lead to some agonizing burning sensations. I mean, plasma pistols have even been shown to burn directly through Spartan armor after just a few shots, and we have nothing comparable to that material at this point. Their grenades are able to stick to surfaces and explode almost immediately after. Their needlers can not only penetrate your flesh with hardened crystals, but if enough needles were to hit you, they'll rupture and explode to guarantee the kill. Their swords are made of hard light energy that can be unsheathed from a small handheld device in order to more discreetly execute enemies. And those are only a few of the weapons at their disposal. Others, including technology as advanced as things like the Banshees, the Wraiths, and especially the Scarabs, would so easily wipe out ground forces, making it shockingly easy for them to seize control of both air and ground. And the walking spider tanks are weapons of mobile destruction in their own tier, as its mounted Scarab turret could so easily decimate cityscapes and entire military forces with ease. I mean, hell, it took the combined force of a high-powered artillery artillery to its legs, and then a Spartan infiltration just to take down one scarab.
Making up the sheer mass amount of numbers for the Covenant army, the Ungoi, aka Grunts, are basically cannon fodder for the Covenant as they dredge into battle wearing their methane tanks just to breathe. They are prone to cowardice, and when higher-ranking officials are killed, will retreat. However, that won't stop them from at least firing off standard-issue Covenant weaponry, and even will sometimes resort to a kamikaze attack involving plasma grenades, when either backed into a corner or just when they feel like it. They can easily operate Covenant vehicles like ghosts to splatter humans, and turrets to become a much more deadly threat. They will most likely be acting as pawns, soaking up most of the gunfire, while the true threats make their way forward, or some of the threats staying back.
The Kig-yar, or jackals, will keep themselves either well hidden or shielded, as they are relatively frail. But their natural heightened senses of sight, smell, and hearing would allow them to be dangerously proficient at sniping targets from great distances, with added agility to give them the chance to dodge enemy fire if they are discovered, or if their kinetic shields are broken. Now, while one jackal may seem easy enough to take out by itself, it would take crack shot aim to disperse numerous jackals behind their shields and distance alone.
Getting a bit beefier and squirmier, the Megalic Golo, however you pronounce that, but we call them hunters, are heavily clad beasts that usually travel and fight in pairs. Despite being comprised as a central network of worm-like creatures called the Lekgolo that eat and break down matter, they possess overwhelming strength as shock troopers in impenetrable armor wielding powerful assault cannons. On the battlefield, a frontal assault would be highly ineffective, and most of us already know at this point, once they have charged forward to attack us, we need to get behind them to hit their one exposed spot. But we probably won't get that chance to do so, as they will either splatter us on impact from their giant shields, or vaporize us with their cannons as other troops hone in on our location. Some other base forms of the Lekgolo were transformed by the Forerunners into Thano-Lekgolo to possibly combat Flood, and would even eat organic matter, meaning their more aggressive nature and hastened speed could lead to people on the streets being eaten slowly alive by these more eel-like creatures.
In the skies above, hives and hordes of annoying as hell Yanme'e, or drones, are not only hellishly numerous and proficient at hard labor, but are quite naturally talented in aerial combat. They can quickly infest the battlefield to attack infantry and survivors from every angle, allowing their allies to close in during the chaos. During prolonged firefights, the drones can be seen constructing underground hives to allow the Covenant to very easily ambush enemies and to also bolster their own numbers and become a persistent threat. If you try to bunker down or try to gain a height advantage, they will get you. While trying to aim at the erratic flying patterns of these aerial forces, you'll more than likely be gunned down by either their plasma pistols or the overwhelming force of the Covenant ground units.
And of course, at the heart of the Covenant forces would be the Sanghaili, otherwise known as elites, cascading a wide array of combat abilities and a varied range of classes based on a sense of honor and duty. Those seen on Ground Zero will most likely be hardened veterans of war, having prowess in almost every weapon available to the Covenant, on top of cat-like reflexes, and worst of all, stealth abilities to camouflage and assassinate any high-named targets. All elite units also carry with them rechargeable kinetic shields to absorb large amounts of damage before their body and armor can even be scathed, wearing down further on our ammo supplies, giving them the edge they need to outlast military units as they cut us down and burn us alive. They are a warrior race, and they will fight you to the death in the most badass way possible.
Now, it is possible that the Jiralhanae, or brutes, would very easily be able to tenderize our bodies with their brute strength. Yeah. Living in a state of constant warfare and a barbaric culture, they blindly follow the Covenant faith and will throw themselves into battle without fear of death. Besides wielding their own forms of brute weaponry, they can also smash you to pieces with either their heavy gravity displacing gravity hammers, or, when their armor is destroyed, they'll just go into a blind rage and beat you to a bloody pulp with their ape-like strength and stature. Their kind rival the wartime efforts and honor of the elites, and while the two species definitely have their differences, they can both very effectively serve the genocidal wants of their Covenant masters.
One species, though, that won't be showing their face are the prophets, the leaders of the Covenant, who suffer from frailty due to lack of self-care and low gravity as they inbreed and float about, professing their divinehood while being susceptible to an easy death. It could be said that maybe stealth organizations from the FBI, CIA, MI6, KGB, or the MIB could send rogue agents by stealing and reutilizing banshees to infiltrate Covenant structures, but it's doubtful they would get very far, no matter how much training they have had against the armada of Covenant forces.
Fighting back against the Covenant would demand the very best humanity could offer, and while maybe we could easily take on grunts and jackals and possibly even a few elites, we have to understand that they can be just as equally cunning and deadly on the battlefield, despite what their appearances may indicate. That, and the fact that their sheer numbers would dwarf us over the brief period that humanity would be at war. And to make matters even more bleak, unless the US government are hiding something, I highly doubt that we have anything that's even close to the Spartan program, to utilize a godlike armor-clad man or woman to decimate their forces and infiltrate their warships. As repeatedly stated before, with most armed conflicts more than likely resulting in failure and the glassing of numerous areas across the globe, the nuclear option would be resorted to. However, considering the UNSC of the Halo universe attempted to bombard Covenant warships with every nuclear warhead they could unleash, even penetrating the seemingly invincible shielding of the ships would prove to be almost as ineffective with how sturdy and well built these ships are. The advanced ships of the Covenant could outlast, outnumber, and almost certainly outgun anything we could throw at them. And I wouldn't rely on any sort of Independence Day or Star Wars level hijinks to kamikaze or shoot an exhaust port or cannon to completely obliterate these ships, as they turned our planet into an ornament and simply another shard of glass.
While it is safe to say why we wouldn't survive orbital glassing efforts, which, if you needed an explanation, glassing is basically where massive Covenant warships aim and heavily charge their plasma turrets enough to where they can strike a planet's surface, to where the sheer heat and radiation of the beam will instantaneously disintegrate anything it comes into contact with, transforming the surface of the planet to a glass-looking mineral referred to as lectolierite. Anything close to the initial burning radius will pretty much mimic that of a nuclear blast, submitting the land, sea, air, and life to hellfire that, depending on the range, could either kill you instantly or have you burning alive, with the subsequent flames burning for long periods of time. Due to this blast, the planet's surface will begin to produce copious amounts of soot and ash that will blanket the sky and air, plummeting everything into a perpetual nuclear winter, rendering the planet uninhabitable for anyone that does survive, all of which can happen relatively quickly in the span of only 2 days.
These warships are also capable of drawing extremely close to Earth's surface to concentrate their plasma beams to either ensure the glassing of a city or a specific target, but can also be used for excavation to unearth anything buried deep beneath the planet's surface, which was precisely how they uncovered the portal to the Ark.
Now, if they were to stumble upon this portal to the Ark, transporting there would be the ultimate goal of the Covenant. If they somehow worked and cooperated with 343 Guilty Spark, despite there not being any reclaimers in the Covenant, or there's no threat of the Flood, shit could happen. And we all know what the Halos are capable of.
And it could even be said that the Covenant may never have even found us before attempting to engage the Holy Rings. And, as Zach stated earlier, if the Covenant were to somehow attain the key to triggering the Halos, and then convince Spark that they were the Reclaimers and have him work some foreigner magic to let them activate the installation, and that this great journey was necessary for our galaxy, we would just be instantly vaporized by the firing of the Halos with no warning beyond, of course, a blinding light.
So between the numbers of varied Covenant infantry, weapons, vehicles, and tech that outclass anything we have available currently, and then the sheer destructive force of the Covenant warships and their plasma glassing of the Earth's surface, we would see a quick extinction event of the Earth's population. Since we don't have a viable way of escaping our own homeworld as it becomes a barren wasteland where all forms of life will be threatened and extinguished, we have nothing to take them on as we exhaust all of our nuclear weapons and all of our armies just to whittle down at least one ship in their vast armada. And we will basically be in the same boat as we were with the scenario of the flood, but with less parasitic invasion of our bodies and more vaporization of our bodies.
If you try to stay safe by going into underground bunkers, you could either be discovered by burrowing drones making their hives, you could be disintegrated by warships simply doing excavations into Earth's surface, or maybe the prophets could even strike deals in order to cause unrest in any remaining pockets of humanity. Or, if you somehow manage to outlast the entire Covenant invasion, well, you wouldn't last very long, as the Earth's surface would be completely uninhabitable. The only reason they would come down to Earth's surface at all would be to reclaim any foreigner relics that aren't human, of course. So once that goal is achieved, our ass will be glass. God damn it, wow. So, to round this off, I think it's safe to say that humanity would not stand the slightest possible chance at stopping the Covenant. This is a religion, a fanatical group, who laid waste to like 90% of human-controlled space 500 years in the future, where our technology is mega advanced and we have super soldiers. When you compare that to nowadays, it doesn't look good, does it? Let's be honest, we would not put up even a shred of a fight. It wouldn't even be close. And so, I think that about wraps up this incredibly grim look into how the Covenant would very clearly wipe us out in no time at all. Do you think you are a Master Chief among men? Do you think that you could arm wrestle a grunt? Did we miss out on any vital information pertaining to the Covenant or Halo lore in general?
Like, comment, sub, and all that jazz, and check out my merch or Patreon to support the channel to be on this supporter list here. Want more Halo? Don't ask Beyonce. Halo! Check out Hidden Xperia's channel for a holy ring's worth of Halo updates, lore, and what-if scenarios, especially with Halo Reach for PC on the immediate horizon and Halo Infinite coming with the new console a bit after.
Click the links above to board the Pelican, or continue your WoW viewing. Thanks for having me on, Zach. I appreciate it.
Glad to have you, man. Until next time, I'm Zach S, aka Wow Such Gaming.
And I'm Hidden Xperia. Stay wow.
Pelican!